we like to feature, property management companies and organizations that are doing things a little differently, and talk to the people at those organizations and see if, our other members can learn something from them as well. Whether they have a small operation or a really big one like yours, I think there's sort of an underlying theme that really anybody can, help out a tenant and also get some benefit from it too. But before we start, I just want to get to know a little bit more about you. So for WPD Management, what is it that you do? When did you start with them? And what's your current role there?
So I'm the director of leasing. So I oversee all of the new leases throughout the year. I oversee a team of internal leasing agents that we have, as well as external representatives, kind of third-party contractors or other realty or brokerage firms that reach out to me for our hot sheets or our vacancy list. We're a South Side company, South Side of Chicago, so we are not downtown or in other parts of the city. We are firmly in Woodlawn. Yeah, I started with WPD towards the beginning of 2019. I took over as the leasing director, and I started envisioning how the direction that we wanted to go as we were looking to expand and grow. And a big part of that was partnering with programs like All Chicago, or kind of thinking outside of the box on how we can expand kind of our foothold as we look to continue growing as a company.
So when you first started working with All Chicago, actually, was that after you started working?
That was a long time after. I actually started working with All Chicago about 6, maybe 7 months before we actually took on our very first resident from them, the client. I had met and heard about their program, and we had scheduled some FaceTimes, and they interviewed me and several others on what a program would look like as they were beginning to set it up, and what would work for a landlord, what would not work for a landlord.
How was the timing with that, with the eviction moratoriums and all of the tenants that were having trouble with housing?
So we approached our handling of the eviction moratorium prior to the state rolling out guidelines. We started to have those conversations with residents that were approaching kind of a threshold of hey, you're falling behind a little bit. Here's where we're at. So we took really a head start rather than waiting until there was specific guidance from the state or from on a federal level. So for WPD's sake, we haven't had too many issues with that. For All Chicago, their program, since they are a subsidized program, it alleviates a lot of those concerns for rent being paid or being facilitated, right? Because their participants are in their program, it kind of gives you a little bit of a safety net to say, well, if the resident is unable to make their rent payment, then they're part of a program. And I know some smaller landlords, they don't haven't considered it or haven't worked with a program like that because they're really counting on that first rent payment on the first of the month or the fifth. 2020 was really hard on a lot of landlords, smaller landlords, because if you can't squeeze blood from a stone,
right? That's it.
And you can't evict anybody, and that doesn't leave you with many options other than potentially offering some I guess mediation solutions. For the smaller landlords, I think that was something that All Chicago was really working on establishing, that hey, we have these folks who are in disenfranchised or have not been able to secure housing from either a financial standpoint or potentially some other, hurdle that they're facing, whether it's a background or an employment or credit or, a lot of the common barriers for housing for some people. And by providing at least the financial security of the assistance program that they have there, it should allay a lot of the landlord fears. And we've been able to move in about 200 and counting. We're
Oh, wow.
actually in the process of adding another 45 units to their availability list. And those are people who were either in missions or shelters or situations where you're having transient housing from either facility to facility. So it's been a big part of our initiative. Coming halfway into 2020, we realized that we need to make some adaptations and some changes. We had a very tough time through our regular avenues. So kind of like that mantra, find a third way.
Yeah.
With that was a big part of my job during the pandemic, keeping the ship moving, I guess you could say, and finding an alternative source of residents that we could really tap for the future. And obviously a lot of that was our success from the management team as well, having those conversations early, being aware of the eviction moratorium and how to properly handle that, working with our current residents on payment plans and restructuring, and kind of one team, one mind, one goal. Our core value is above all else care. And so part of during 2020, we really wanted to embody that and looked into several programs, including All Chicago, where it would have a large community impact and where it would allow us to kind of continue the plan of growing and expanding.
That's great. And it seemed like you already had so much familiarity with subsidized housing and those sort of programs even prior to the pandemic. So that certainly would have helped. I know there are a lot of landlords and property managers that are a little hesitant or maybe fearful of those types of programs. Maybe they think that they may not receive the same quality tenants or have the same results. I know that still pretty recent with the All Chicago program, but it seems like you've been doing similar things for a long time. What would you say in response to those hesitations? What has the experience been like?
So our experience overall with not-for-profit or so I guess it really more appropriately subsidized housing in general is overall fairly positive. When dealing with a population that maybe is challenged or is coming from a place of where it may be a second chance program, for rehabilitation or employment challenged, or we work with several subsidy partners that also work with people who have difficult backgrounds too, that a landlord might have trouble palleting. The involvement of or the direct involvement of a caseworker, we have found has always been beneficial for just coordinating through the program, from anywhere to Mrs. Jones at in unit 101 seems to be having a tough time. She's reaching out to her property manager, let's coordinate with her caseworker and get a solution there. Or we're seeing that a tenant may have difficulty paying and they haven't previously been, they're starting to gain a portion out of the program. What does their transition look like? Let's implement a plan with their caseworker on as they transition in or out of the program, and what does that look like? We've always found that works the best. It's a great support system, and it allows people to really have a great shot at transitioning into more traditional rental programs, such as the Chicago Housing Authority, like long-term subsidization, or alternatively, being able to afford the rent on their own as well.
Yeah, that's always the goal, right? That they actually transition to that. And
As a landlord, if you have a PSH tenant, a permanent supportive housing tenant, that's, you don't have to worry about any sort of rent issues, which is, for some smaller landlords, that is the main priority, right? For larger ones, it's occupancy and length of time and, overall costs and things like that. But for smaller landlords, the ones who may be a little bit more hesitant to engage in subsidized housing or really, find that third way, programs like these are, in my opinion, one of the best alternatives.
That's great. Yeah. And it seems like you've really used it as a tool for your company to grow as well. So, I mean, it sounds like it checks all the boxes. Now, I also saw that you have your WPD Cares webpage on your site. And I believe earlier this year, you had given out some help with rent to some of your residents. And I really loved that. I thought that was just so fantastic of your company to be able to recognize the need and help some of your renters who were really struggling. And that must have made a big difference for them. And so I'd love to hear from you sort of what the motivation was behind that and the results of that program that you did this year.
We had a lot of time as leaders, as part of our leadership conference, to meet and really establish what we wanted to be coming, powering through the pandemic, how we were going to get through it, and what we wanted to be on the coming out of it. Now, we didn't know, I will say, we did not know it was going to be 15 months or however long it's been. I think we'd planned on maybe 3 or 4 at the time. I told my team to pack up your computer. I had everyone take their PCs, multiple screens. And I said, take your computers, we'll be back in a month. And obviously it ended up being much longer. I think that was still back in the 2 weeks to flatten the curve part stage. But it gave us the time to really look at how we wanted to grow in that moment during those challenges, and how we can really come out of it stronger, better, smarter. And one of the big things was really establishing our core, our mission, and our vision as who we wanted to be as a company. And one of those things that we worked on was above all else care, and that led to our WPD Cares, realizing that we wanted to have a larger measurable impact, not just providing great housing or providing the best service that we can, but really taking it a step further. And that led kind of to our thought process on how we really want to interact with more not-for-profit activities, how we want to really have an impact on our community, and it's led to us partnering with several activities, such as we're doing here in a couple of weeks, we're doing a block cleanup, where some WPD staff are going to partner with a group here to clean up a block surrounding a couple of our buildings. We've had great success at one of our properties, where the property manager actually went above and beyond and organized that toy drive, as you saw on there. And part of that was also coordinating with residents who were in need, and being able to step in there and help facilitate some desperate relief that they were looking for.
Yeah. Well, I really hope that there are other property management companies or landlords even that are coming out of this with that similar kind of mentality, because I think it's taught us a lot. And I'm very hopeful that landlords and tenants will come out of this stronger than before, working together better than they ever have been, accommodating tenants in ways that they might not have before. And overall, just to provide better housing, because it's an important work. people need housing, they always will. And, you know, the better we can provide them that's really the goal.
As all Chicago and programs similarly to grow, I think that they really do have a vast impact, not just on kind of the landlord situation, but also housing in general in the city. You know, Chicago is one of the best cities that I've ever lived in. It's very community driven. It's very neighborhood based. People are very familiar with what they like, and they like to stay where they like. So you know, the rents in Chicago right now are at a pretty good place where they're not, you know, unobtainable for a good portion of the community. But I think over the last year, it really taught us that it doesn't take much to kind of tip the scales for a lot of people. And I think that's something that landlords need to keep in mind, is that it requires balance. It requires an effort to continue providing the level of service that people need. And so working with programs like this kind of make sure that the scales are a little bit more balanced for a landlord financially, and will allow them to provide the services that you're looking for.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, it's a great message to share. And like I said, I really hope people really take that and run with it. You know, it's really necessary.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, we certainly have. So we'll see if other, you know, if other folks decide to take that opportunity as well.